Hey, everybody, and welcome to An Action Filmmaking Podcast. This is episode 31. And today we are going way back and talking about a little movie called The Assault, which Mike and myself both had a part in. And we had a great time making this movie back in the winter of, I want to say, 2015. We made this one. So we're going way back to 2015. We're going to talk all about it. If you worked on this movie, you might know of this movie as Blue Line, but then of course the movie changed names, which happens sometimes. So today we're diving into The Assault. It stars Tom Sizemore. It stars Kevin Nash. It stars Jordan Ladd. We've got a lot to talk about with this one, and it was also the first time that I ever played the role of a villain, which actors out there know that, hey, everybody wants to be a good guy in life, but sometimes in the movies it's more fun to play a bad guy. So we're excited to be here. Our Ant Action pals are checking in. Kim Kaling, how are you? It's good to see you. Mike, how are you doing? And how was your feedback on last week's Happy New Year episode? New Year, new movies.
Hey Tommy, I'm doing pretty well, thanks. And Kim herself and Ariana Pacheco checked in, and they both liked the episode. And I know there was another watcher that enjoyed the book recommendation I made and about screenwriting, and it seemed like it was a good show. It went over pretty well.
I think so too, man. It's one of those things where, last week's almost like a stumble out of the gate week for most people. To me, it's almost like this is the true first week of the year. Because, hey, last week we're a little foggy. Some people are still on vacation, getting back into it. Well, here we are. 2023 is live and it ain't going anywhere. So I'm having a good year so far, Mike, and I'm excited to talk about this movie. Um, you got to think back. It's funny, this movie came out in 2017, but we
Right.
made it back in 2015. As you know, movies can sometimes, for a number of reasons, just take a little time to get out, whether it's time in the post production world or sometimes just strategically. A lot of people sometimes have a bit of a negative perception if a movie takes a little while to come out. You have people that you worked on with the movies, crew people and fellow actors saying, "Hey, we made that movie like almost 2 years ago. When's it coming out?" And it
Right.
seems like a negative thing, but it's really not. All it is a lot of times the movie's completed and wrapped up with a bow around it, and it's the distributor that's just waiting for the right time strategically to put it out. And as you can imagine, there's multiple factors that go into that. Certain movies do better at different times of the year. Um, you know, Horror movies, slasher movies, a lot of those films are great to come out during the summer because they know that kids are out of school and they're ready to go to movies. Obviously, seasonal movies are seasonal movies. So you got to look at what's coming out up against those movies. Is there a big studio movie that's coming out that's very similar to this film that we may not want to butt heads with? So there's a bunch of reasons why this
Yeah.
one came out in 2017.
Well, Tommy, I'll jump in on that a bit. A great example recently that people can relate to is Top Gun Maverick. I believe was held for 2 years. Tommy, I think it was supposed to come out in the summer of 2020 because I've been seeing previews for that thing forever. And our friend, the pandemic, basically made the studio realize if we release this huge Tom Cruise, 30 years in the making sequel in the middle of a pandemic when maybe 80% of the movie going public is not going to either be able to go see a movie in the theater or will not want to out of fear for this horrible virus. So they held it. They held it all the way, I believe, for 2 full years, Tommy. And I'm sure people like Miles Teller, was excited because that was a big movie for his career. And but they did what was best for business, and it turns out that Maverick, I think, got bumped down to number two for 2022 box office from Avatar 2. But regardless, it did gangbusters. I saw it
Yeah,
4 times in the theater, and it was actually playing for months in the theater, Tommy. Like this movie
sure.
had real legs. Like it played in the theater for about 8 months,
Yeah,
on and
Mike,
off.
it actually, I just looked the other day because I just happened to be looking at some numbers for Avatar 2. I'm pretty sure Top Gun is in the top 10 highest grossing films of all time. So they, whatever they did worked. They did not crash and burn, to use a Top Gun related dad joke. Uh,
Right.
they obviously were very wise to do that, and it was successful. So sometimes we have a Jason Cherubini checking in,
Hi,
fellow
Jason.
producer, filmmaker. What's up, Jason? Good to have you on the show today. Yeah, Avatar 2 just crushed it. Um, but yeah, it's all strategic in terms of how they put these films out. Um, Also, I just wanted to say real quick before we dive too deeply into this show, I went over 800 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Thank you very much to
Well,
everybody who
congratulations.
subscribed. Appreciate that. And we are rapidly approaching 200,000 views. So thank you for the 200,000 views. That's actually 400,000 eyeballs if you count both of the eyes, provided that everybody has both eyes watching this. I guess I'm probably reaching with that assumption, but that's a lot of eyeballs. So thank you for all the eyes on my content. And let's just dive into it. Mikey, the plot summary, hit us with it.
Oh boy, Tommy.
Oh, he doesn't
So
have his notes ready. I'll read it. I'll read it. I'll read it.
you go
All right.
ahead.
All right. A
You take
woman
this one.
and her best friend go on a crime spree to rob her husband and escape her abusive marriage. That's pretty much it in a simple little mouthful. And as you can imagine, I told you I played a bad guy. Well, that woman who's in an abusive marriage, I play the abusive husband. So I'm public enemy number one. Those are weird roles to play. We're going to talk about that later, but it's funny because if anyone knows me in person, I wouldn't hurt a fly for the most
Sure.
part. You know, I'm not really an aggressive, violent guy. You know,
No,
I'm certainly not a pushover, but I'm not one to start shit with people.
you're not a bully in any regard. You're not going to physically, hurt somebody, especially a female.
No. So
So yeah,
these are always funny, and I don't mean to poke humor at being abusive, but they're difficult roles to play because they're so far removed from who you really are. But it's your
right.
job as the actor to do it to the fullest and make everyone believe that that's who you in fact are. So again, we're gonna dive into it, and again, it's cool to have Jason Cherubini on this movie because he was in watching this feed because he was involved in the assault as well, way back when we called it Blue Line. So guys, I'm going to take you way back on this one. This is the first movie that I ever worked on that was produced by Richard Switzer. Richard's a great friend of mine. In fact, Richard, aka the brother, we just made a movie called The Collective together. So when I think back on a movie like The Assault, it's just so cool and kind of just wild how time is that, Richard and I were working on this movie 7 years ago. I was acting in it, and now here we are 7 years later. I just directed a movie that he produced. So it's really great to keep those relationships going. This was also the first movie that David Gear produced that I was involved in. And I met Richard through David. So the backstory is kind of funny. We've talked about David Gear many times, very successful producer. Since this movie, he's gone on to do a ton of things. Uh, we had this text chain. It's amazing what can be done in business through a really solid text chain. And sometimes when you get invited into the right text chain, it's almost like you're part of a club.
Sure.
So at the time, there was a text chain going between David Gear, Richard Switzer, and my good friend John Del Ponte, who we talk about on the show all the time.
Oh yeah.
He was my production designer on many of films. So, the four of us had a text chain going. And I remember David introducing me through Richard in the chain by basically just saying, like, no, this kid Richard's really cool. He likes wrestling. He likes all the kind of same movies that you like, same sense of humor. I think you'd really like this dude. So basically, Richard and I started chatting on this text chain with David and Jonathan and silly, fun, sophomoric humor, goofy gifs, goofy memes, pictures. And we just became pals. And I had never laid eyes on him. This was all just through text message. And then I remember kind of, oh, we're going to do this movie together. It's called Blue Line. At the time, it was called Blue Line, which is a little double entendre. Of course, they say that men and women in uniform, police officers, they toe the blue line.
Right.
That's kind of a phrase that police officers use. And also as a double entendre, because at the end of the movie, the bad guys were going to run off with the money on a bus called the Blue Line. So that's why the movie was originally called that. And basically, one thing led to another, and there was this part for an abusive boyfriend. And, you know, after chatting with David and chatting with Richard for probably, I think this text chain was probably going, it's probably active for about, 4 or 5 months now. We're all just buddies on this text chain. Yeah, this role would be great for Tommy. And David and Richard offered me the part. And I remember cracking the script for the first time. And excuse me, at this time I had been in movies before. I had acted in films. I've had some great roles. I worked on Infected. I was in Incubus, little bit parts here and there. But this was different. There was something about this part that was different. Um, I was younger at the time, obviously, but I was, in my late 20s, and this was like the first movie role that I played where it was like a kind of a grown ass man,
Right.
just like a guy. I had been used to playing the college kid, the rookie cop, um, you know, younger guy parts. This was a man's man. He was married. He had a wife. He had a business. So I remember feeling like, wow, this is a really kind of like a new chapter. We even talked about this on our show last week. How sometimes actors are afraid to lean into their actual legitimate age.
Right.
That's not a bad thing. Sometimes you lean into that age, and it's like, no, you know what? Oh, Tommy's almost 30 years old or whatever. Like Tommy's 30, he could play this part. Yeah, that's great. So don't be afraid to lean into that age. I'm going to check in real quick here. Jason Cherubini says altitude. Oh, I got it. Thank you for the correction, Jason. Jason was not with us on this film. He came in, I think, just a movie or two later on Altitude,
I think
which
that was a Denise Richards film, wasn't it?
that was. And Jason, you can rest assured we're going to do a deep dive on Altitude, probably maybe later in the winter. That was a fun movie to work on. Andre Sanchez. Hola, what's up, brother? How you doing? Good to have you with us, as always. Talking Blue Line.
Hi, Andre.
And I love Andres. Always has the dope emojis. He's got the cop emoji there.
Hey, Tommy, let me jump in on something you were mentioning. The title of this film did change. And sometimes, for me, I've noticed a pattern where there are movies where the title only makes sense once you've actually seen the movie. And there are titles of films that help get your butt into the theater or help you push that, play button on Netflix or streaming, whatever. And if you look at those two different titles, Blue Line, what does that mean? If you don't know what the movie's about, you're not going to know what it's about from Blue Line, right? But if you hear The Assault, okay, there's some violence, there's some conflict, there's an attack. So at least it kind of gets you in the right mindset for your potential ticket purchase.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's an arresting title that just makes you say, "Oh, cool! I'm looking for an action movie tonight." The Assault. Bam! You throw Tom Sizemore on the cover with a gun in his hand and a car in the background and an explosion. Yeah, I'm in. That's a great point, Mike. Sometimes if you're not making like an art house film where you're trying to really like be provocative, not thought provoking. You don't need to overthink your title in an action movie that you're just trying to get butts and seats, as you say. So first movie with Richard Switzer, David Gere. Uh, Another character in this movie, in a sense, is the town of Cromwell,
Yeah.
which is David's hometown. That's where this movie was shot. David has a ton of relationships and influence in that town, and was able to really have them kind of open their doors for us. And we very much all felt like we were kind of honorary town residents of Cromwell, and it's a great place to make a movie. It's got this almost like you'll hear the phrase "Any Town USA." It's kind of got
Right.
Any Town USA vibe to it, and it's almost like Springfield on The Simpsons. You
I
know,
think I, yeah, I think I dubbed the term the King of Cromwell on our friend David Gere, film producer.
no question, he is the king of Cromwell. But I mean it. Cromwell's an interesting town because it's almost like Springfield in The Simpsons. How do you know how
Right.
Springfield has like if they need a waterfall, suddenly there's a waterfall in Springfield. If they need a little bit of a city, yeah, there's a little city in Springfield. There's a
Sure.
little residential area. There's a little farmland in Springfield
A
if you
little
need it.
circus. Yeah.
Because it's an animated town and they can kind of draw whatever the fuck they need to draw in there. Well,
Right.
Cromwell's kind of the same way, but in real life. Like for a small town, it's got a whole lot to offer in terms of location. So we had a blast working there. Um, let's just get into it, guys. The movie stars. Tom Sizemore, Jordan Ladd, Nikki Moore is great in this movie, and also Kevin Nash, who has a special place in my heart because when I was 10 years old, Kevin Nash was the heavyweight champion of the world. And when you're 10 years old, that's kind of like I feel like 10 is like a really like memory building era in a youngster's life because it's like you're old enough to understand things. You're old enough to grasp things a little bit better. Your memory banks are a little more fulfilled. So, or I should say, a little more matured, and things stick in your head. And to me, Kevin Nash playing the character Diesel, wearing a black leather jumpsuit, holding his giant arm up in the air with the heavyweight title. That's a memory that lasts in my mind as a little 10-year-old kid. So when you hear, I'll never forget. I was in Las Vegas actually at CES, which is a big, basically like a convention in Vegas. And like it's one of those moments when I remember looking at the text chain. I was in line getting breakfast in the morning, and David and Richard were talking about, yeah, I think we got Kevin Nash. And I remember just like kind of stopping what I'm doing in line. And at that point to me, like that was even more significant than my actual role in the movie. Like the fact that like, wow, I might get a little one-on-one time with Kevin Nash. So really cool to work with him. We talked a little bit about my part. We're going to dive into Kevin in detail. But first, let's talk about me, obviously. Just kidding.
We have been for 20 minutes. What are you talking about?
But no, we really, we'll start with basically like, I'm playing Jordan Ladd's abusive husband.
Yes.
It was a funny thing because the first day, the first scene, I had never even met Jordan before. Let's talk a minute about Jordan Ladd. If you don't know Jordan Ladd, she's a terrific actress. I was kind of excited because she's in a movie that I watched on heavy rotation in college. Like that shit was on repeat, and that's Broken Lizard's Club Dread, which is a very funny kind of a horror comedy, which is just, I mean, hey, I loved it when I was, like I said, in college. We used to just fire that movie up, fire up a few other things, and have a hell of a time. So Jordan played the character of Penelope, who has some recognizable moments and very fun moments, and I love that movie. So when I found out, I'm like, oh wow, I'm Penelope's husband. This is crazy. Right. This is what a world I'm living in. And I remember I had to do a very abusive scene with her, like right from jump, where I'm kind of screaming and yelling at her and everything else.
Was this the kitchen scene, Tommy?
Yes.
I think I actually coached you for this because you were pretty invested, I think is the word for this role, and you asked me to help you out a little bit. So I think we actually broke down the script, and we had a actress friend of ours, Anna Rizzo, come over and take the scene as the female character, and we worked it out a bit to help get you ready for that. Yeah.
We did, Mike, and I appreciate that because let me tell you, those couple 2-3 sessions that we had were so helpful when it came time to actually like play in the game. And actors out there, like if you get a part and you really want to come correct on set, this is no knock to you. This isn't saying that like you don't have what it takes on your own. You should get yourself an acting coach and just be working that scene out with a partner and just finding all the beats. Don't stay married to any one way that you're performing because you might get on set and the director might say, no, I don't want it like that. But to play to that point, have multiple approaches in mind. I remember that's something that Mike did. We almost had like how a football team would have a playbook of like a few different plays that you could run. We kind of had a playbook of like, well, here's a few different ways that you could play this character. This is kind of the nicer version that's still creepy. This is kind of the straight up angry, no bullshit version. This is the kind of in the middle version. So I kind of had it set so that when I got to work with director Jacob Cooney, who we'll talk about him in a minute, but this is the first time I worked with Jacob, and he just directed me in Merry Xmas all these years later. So I wanted to make sure that when it came time to work with Jake, if there was something that I had, it wasn't too set in my mind that like I couldn't break it if I had to. So thank you for that. And if anybody needs some acting coaching, this guy in the panel right over here, very good at what he does. So
Thanks, buddy.
don't be afraid to drop a message down on this show. And Mike,
Online classes or online one-on-one coaching is really good too, because I charge very affordable rates and try to help people. And our mutual friend Fred Sullivan was both of our first acting coach, in a class environment. So
yeah,
um, definitely we'll save this for another show, Tommy, but definitely people, if they want to be actors, first become a good actor, then go out and get roles. We'll leave it at that for now, but we'll do another episode about this topic.
yeah, I think that's a great idea, Mike. There's so much to talk about, so we'll table that. But yeah, I mean, I get that all the time, Mike. Like, hey, I want to get into acting. It's like, well, are you taking acting classes right now? Are you working with a coach right now? Oh, you're not. So you just want somebody to hand you a role, then? Okay.
Right.
So yeah, get out there and work. All right, so I had to do this like really intense scene with this woman that I've never met in my life. I got to be screaming and hollering at her. So we met for like 2 minutes in the makeup chair, like, "Hey, how you doing? Oh, wow." And I was like, and she was really cool. She was like, "Hey, this is some intense stuff." And I was like, "Yeah." And she kind of said, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she basically said it in a nice way, like, "Well, have at it. Like, let's, like, I'm excited to see what you bring to the table here." Um, and it's funny, man, because I remember just having all these options and choices, and I got to work and I got on set, and I remember Richard was there, Switzer. Obviously, David was there, and Tyler Connie was there, who is a producer who produced this movie, also has the story by credit on the film. And I remember doing my first scene, turning around, and just seeing this like really satisfied look on their faces. And they were kind of laughing. They were like, "Oh man, when you said this line and when you said that line, that was awesome." So, like, getting that kind of first initial boost from those guys when I saw that, wow, the producers like what I'm doing. And then Jordan, after the first little bit, "Oh, this is really great. Oh, yeah, you're doing terrific." Like, just getting that positive reinforcement. I'm not saying that I needed a pat on the ass, but when you're in a new environment around all these new people that you never worked with before, to get that natural energy of like, okay, I can tell people are actually responding to what I'm doing. Man, does that give you confidence. And that confidence, I really think that from that boost that I got on the first day, I carried that energy through the whole movie, all the way right down to my first scene with Tom Sizemore when he said the same things and actually was like, "Hey man, like you should be in LA. Like, why aren't you in LA? Like you should be working all the time." Um, so it was cool to work with these people. And again, I guess this is another thing. We try to find things that you can learn from these experiences on this show. I don't want this show just to be me ranting and raving about my bullshit memories of the past. I'm trying to do this so that you guys can take something from it.
Sure.
So there you have it. Like, what can we
Well,
take from that? Like, even the quote big actors and the producers, don't be afraid to give a little bit of that positive reinforcement, especially on day one, man. It goes a long way.
that's what I was going to say, Tommy. I think you make a great point that for those that are on a set, if you have a bit more experience, or even if you don't, there's no bad to come from being positive and encouraging. And Tommy, we've probably both been on sets where there's an actor or two or a crew member that's maybe inexperienced or in over their head a little bit, and the easy emotion to have is kind of anger, frustration, disgust, disappointment with that person. But if you just kind of put yourself in their shoes, remember everybody's a rookie at least once in their life with something. You might have more compassion and treat that person a bit more humanely, and that's only going to be good for you and everybody else. And we've both been on sets, positive experiences and negative experiences, and to me it usually makes a big difference. People's morale and their work, their final product is going to be factored by how they're treated and how they treat others.
Yeah, that's a fact. And again, a movie set is a team, and you see it all the time. If you're watching, it's the end of the NFL football season. A lot of teams are making their playoff run, or the playoffs are about to start. How many times do you see the other players pat each other on the back, high five, slap heads? And I'm not saying movies are like football, but I'm saying like encouragement is such a powerful thing. It can really fire you up to do things that you didn't think you were even capable of doing if the right people get behind you and tell you, You're doing it. Keep going, and you got this kind of a thing. It's the same thing on a movie set, and that trickles down to every position on a movie set. So let's talk about good old Tommy Sizemore.
Oh yeah.
Tom Sizemore was by far the biggest name in this movie. He's a guy who's obviously we've talked about Tom before on this show. Black Hawk Down, Saving Private Ryan, Point Break, like just so many memorable roles. The guy is just a wild talent. So as a younger actor, you just want to soak up everything this guy does like a sponge. Um, and again, he's like flipping a switch. Some of these actors, they come in and they're very methodic about how they approach things, and you can't really futz with what's going on. You got to kind of give them their space. Tom's not like that. He'll be kind of shooting the breeze with you 1 minute, flip the switch, jump in a scene, and deliver some really incredible stuff in a matter of seconds. He's an old school guy from Detroit. He played a lot of football. Really good quarterback as a kid. It's kind of interesting. He actually travels with a football, and he'll just kind of like hold it, and he'll just have it all the time. He's got, I don't want to. I'm not Tom's PR guy, but I'm not his back doctor either. But he had some back injuries, and it was kind of interesting. He would actually like use the football to like lay on it and like massage his back, like almost like how you do like one of those rolling kind of foam rollers. It's
Yeah,
funny
straight
because
the lower lumbar.
yeah, people weren't really using foam rollers a whole lot like 7, 8 years ago. But I remember Tom Sizemore had a football and was using it as a foam roller to stretch his back out. So kind of a cool thing. But then he'd stretch his back out, he'd get up, and he'd want to throw a post pattern. So I definitely caught quite a few footballs from Tom Sizemore, which was fun, just like throwing the ball around between takes and things like that. And naturally, like you learn a lot from being on set with Tom. He taught me a lot just by like watching him do his thing. But we also just had a lot of fun. I mean, Tom kind of took me under his wing a little bit on this movie. I remember I'd actually read with him sometimes. We'd break the script out, and he invited me to his hotel room to kind of do some reading. And it's kind of funny because this is going to sound wild, but at the time, and maybe this is a story I shouldn't tell, but hey, you know what? Our and action listeners goddamn deserve a little dirt,
Yeah.
a little inside
A
information,
little dirt.
a
Yeah.
little bit of dirt, my boy. So Tom's a cigarette smoker, or at least he was at the time. I don't know if he still is. But I remember knocking on the door of his room, and at the time I was smoking too. And since like probably 2005, you really can't find too many smoking hotels anymore. It's not really a thing. This
Right.
maybe somewhere down south you can, maybe in Vegas you can. Most upstanding, nice hotels, you can't smoke cigarettes anywhere. You can go outside. Now, and I get it. Listen, Tom's a very known face. So
Right.
it's frustrating when you're a very known face and you got to go outside and smoke your cigarettes because now guess what? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry who sees you smoking a cigarette outside, it's like, oh, Tom, hey, man, hey, can I get a picture? Oh, I'll
Right.
smoke a cigarette with you. And everybody suddenly wants to hear Black Hawk Down stories and Steven Spielberg tales. And Tom just wants to go outside and have a butt. So I understand why, hey, knock on the door. Oh, come in the bathroom. Come in the bathroom. I'm like, what? And he's like, come in the bathroom. And I've never seen anything like this. He takes the office chair from the desk and he wheels it into the bathroom. And the bathroom essentially becomes his office while he's
Okay.
in the hotel. He's
Right.
got everything laid out on the counter of the sink. Like all of the things that one would need: your cell phone charger, your phone, your laptop, any papers that you might have, your script, change, your keys if you got them, toiletries, everything. It's just like a mass of stuff on the sink because he's kind of like almost like moved into the bathroom. Now,
Right.
granted, it's a spacious bathroom. He's in a hotel suite, but it's because he can rip butts in the bathroom. And that's kind of like anybody who knows road smoking, anyone who's a bad kid who might have smoked in a hotel before. It's not a 100% method to not get in trouble. But if you're gonna fire anything up, you fire it up in the bathroom. You run the vent to the shower, maybe even you run the shower, and you hope for the best. You got a door that you can shut. You put the towel under the door, and you pray that nobody complains.
Right.
So that was kind of my first experience, just like as a kid. I say kid, I'm almost probably 30 at the time, but younger actor walking in, seeing Tom in his bathrobe, and he's kind of just like, oh, quick, come in the bathroom. And I'm like, what? Oh, okay. Oh, we can smoke in here.
Yeah.
We can smoke in here. It's all good. So we ripped some butts and did our lines and, rehearsed a little bit. And again, these are all the wild little stories, the things that you remember all these years later. But as funny as we're cracking jokes about it, it makes sense. I mean, like I remember Tom just kind of, and he was really polite with everybody, so don't take this the wrong way. But he's got a very recognizable face, and anywhere he goes, it's just like stop, chat, take a photo. Oh, you were my favorite in this movie. I love this movie. I didn't like that movie. You know that one you did with
Yeah.
so and so. So it's like he's just like, you know what, fuck it. I'll eat the smoking in the room fee to avoid having to deal all that bullshit every time I go out and have a cigarette.
Well, to your point, Tommy, I believe in the chronology of events, Tom had actually done a couple of reality TV show, not just appearances, but series. And I believe they were like Celebrity Rehab. And then I think there was one that Tom was the featured guy, like one about Tom's life, overcoming addictions and so forth. This is no secret because this was on worldwide television.
Sure.
So in addition to being the guy that someone could go up and talk about Steven Spielberg and Black Hawk Down and so forth, not only that, but the general public might feel empowered or even entitled to go talk to Tom about his private life. And to that end, Tom, kind of made that out there, a public domain type of thing almost because he's doing these reality shows. So I can see where his he would want even more privacy than the typical movie star. I did catch a little moment, Tommy, where you and Tom were outside sharing one of those cigarettes, and I saw Tom, not screaming at you, but very loudly telling you, "Never cut your hair, never cut your hair. Your hair is great." Because at the time he kind of had like the Kip Winger, a black beard and long hair, or Kerry Von Erich on a bad day type of look. And Tom was a big fan of your long hair.
Yeah, it's funny. Mike, this is why I love doing these shows because I forgot all about that moment. And it's fun to do these shows because sometimes you'll remember a little something to fill in some of the blanks in my memories, and I'll do the same for you. But yeah, I remember he was very emphatic about that. And it was really just about his speech for that moment was like, most people in Hollywood look the same kind of thing.
Right.
Right? Like if you go to any casting call, just about everyone's between, 5'10" and 6'2", handsome, ripped, with a really nice, fashionable short haircut that they probably paid way too much money for. If you're that one guy in the room that's got the long hair down to his back, suddenly it's like, wow, this guy's different. And different ends up turning into this word, which is interesting. So it's having long hair as an actor, it's just that one little extra thing that might be different that separates you from all the other people in the room. And the beauty part about having long hair too is a lot of times people like to cast someone with long hair because when you have long hair as an actor, you're the ultimate blank canvas because they can fuck with your hair at any length. Oh, we want it mid-range. We can do that. We can chop just a little off. Oh, we're going to go short. Oh, we'll buzz the whole thing off. But you have some shit to work with.
Right.
So that's why you'll see, it's funny, a lot of the classic photos of like Robert De Niro auditioning for The Godfather or whatever, or Harrison Ford auditioning for Han Solo, you'll see that they have longer hair. And part of that's because it was the 70s. But another part of it is a lot of actors like to grow everything out. They'll grow the beard out, they'll grow the hair out in between roles because again, like that's how you keep yourself as the most blank canvas for whatever you want. We can craft it into any way you'd like. Customize that shit.
Well, Tommy, there were so many great memories on this thing. our friend David actually enlisted me to be Kevin Nash's bodyguard for one day. And when that was just so absurd, Tommy, because Kevin Nash is 7 feet tall, 340 pounds, and a former WWF and WCW World Wrestling Champion. And I was happy to do it. And I remember we were on a set that particular day, and David had kind of, given me the Iggy to not don't allow any autograph seekers to come up to David, either from the general public or the cast and crew. And David really was trying to drive that home to me. So I got Kevin Nash, with me and the whole cast and crew, and I decided to speak up and make some big announcement. Hey, folks, we've got our friend Kevin Nash today. He's really happy to be here. We're happy to have him, but please, out of respect for his privacy, please no autograph seeking. And then as soon as I said that, Kevin says, I don't mind. So he kind of left me hanging out there. And that's what I think, I don't think I really need to be this guy's bodyguard, but I'll stand around anyway.
Oh man, that's a classic example of you're just doing your job and you end up looking like the asshole,
Right.
even though you were specifically told, "Hey, let everyone know." But yeah, that's it, Mike. It's for the same reason that Tom would get bombarded by autograph seekers, fan seekers, photo seekers. You damn well Kevin Nash would, because here's the thing about Kevin Nash, and you said it yourself. He's with shoes on. He's 7 feet tall. Okay,
Right.
so you don't have to be a wrestling fan. When you see that man, you look at him and he's also, hey, he's very handsome. He's 6 feet tall. He's muscular as all get out, jacked up, looks like carved from stone. You look at that guy and you say, this guy's somebody.
Right.
This ain't just a regular Joe walking around Cromwell. Like, this guy must be a famous athlete, a famous something. Like, this is somebody. So Kevin Nash has that kind of air that he exudes, that quality of he's a famous motherfucker just by looking at him. So that's why he needs a bodyguard. Again, it's not bodyguard. We think bodyguard, like, I don't picture you diving in the way of a hail of gunfire to protect Kevin Nash on set. It was really just to keep the riffraff away from him so that he doesn't have to be the jerk. Because again, that's the other thing, unfortunately, everybody's got a phone these days. So if a celebrity has just one bad moment, one little flicker of humanity where they're having a bad day and they tell someone in not so many words, you know what, go fuck yourself. I don't really want to take a picture right now. Like, God forbid that ever happened. TMZ, it's on social media. This guy's horrible to his fans. So it's kind of like people like that. You were enlisted to protect him in a way from himself.
I was a buffer, and I think that's to the psychology of gear that I've learned some life lessons from, or career lessons anyway, is perhaps using the term bodyguard was just a way of flattering me, so I do it, as opposed to saying gopher or assistant or PA.
It was very cute, Mike, because I do remember this. And somewhere there's a famous photo of this, but you actually did show up wearing the classic black T-shirt that says security on it.
It was a vest. I still have it.
It was a vest
and a hat, and I had a hat too.
You looked like John Candy at the end of National Lampoon's Vacation, kind of.
Oh, thanks a lot.
The security guard at the
end. We got Kip Winger and John Candy on this set. It was an experience, Tom. I think the same day, Bob Backlund, the former, once again, two-time WWF champion, I think he just stopped by. I don't even think he was in the movie, but Bob.
Yeah, that's very possible. He lives in Connecticut, but I don't want. Let's not get too deep into wrestling just yet, buddy. Let's not go. Let's go down that road again. So let's talk a little more about Nash. So obviously, I told you I was very excited about working with Kevin Nash. I remember the first time I met him. David's really cool about this stuff. Shout out to David Gear again. He kind of arranged that. I don't think I was working this day. I think I would be working the next day. And he was like, come to breakfast. We're shooting at this diner, and me and Nash are going to get breakfast, and I'll introduce you. It's always nice, unlike Jordan, like just getting thrown right into the mix. Like, me and Kevin actually got to sit down, have a little breakfast. And, at the time, I was probably like 20, 30 pounds heavier than I am now. I was lifting weights a lot. And guys that lift weights kind of have this like unwritten conversation that they can have, or I should say, just very easy conversation. It was one of those things where, like Nash might have ordered a bunch of egg whites and I might have ordered a bunch of egg whites. And you could just kind of tell by like what we were eating that we were like, as they say in the wrestling business, body guys. And we hit it off. We just started talking about working out. And then after a few back and forths, after a few conversational volleys, if you will, it was very obvious that not only are David and I wrestling fans, but we're educated wrestling fans. See, there's a lot of people that'll go out and say, I like wrestling. I used to watch Hulk Hogan. You're not
Right.
really a wrestling fan. You're a fan of nostalgia, pop culture. Maybe you liked it as a kid. Mike and I are fans to the point where maybe it's unhealthy, and we we listen to wrestling podcasts. We do deep dives on the history of every single wrestler that we grew up loving, and we could tell you, Mike is especially, you know, pretty methodical with his knowledge of wrestling. Can tell you dates and lineups and everything else. So my point is, it was obvious after a little bit of conversation that David and I knew quite a bit about the wrestling business, which allowed Kevin to open up his conversational approach to things. And that breakfast was just something else. I mean, we were just talking about everything. I think by the end of it, we're talking about literally like training techniques and things like that. So we hit it off really well. We hit it off so well that I had an idea.
Okay.
And there's a lesson in this idea. But before we get into my idea and what actors can learn with my lesson, let's check in with Andres. Long hair sideburns gang coming at you. Yeah, we love a little sideburn. Get a little sideburn on you. Did you know that the sideburns were first created by General Burnside, who is a native Rhode Islander, and he was a general in the Civil War for the Union. So
There you go.
there you go. If you ever want to know the origin of the sideburn, look that shit up. General Ambrose Burnside.
Hashtag Union Strong.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Then we have Jared Hartley. What's up, Jared? Ricky the Dragon. Oh man, who didn't love Ricky the Dragon Steamboat? The perpetual baby face. Never turned heel in his life. Just a good guy, damn it. And a hell of a high flyer. All right, so my thing, my idea. I had a great breakfast with Nash, and my character never has a scene with Kevin in the movie. We talk about business between my two characters, but there's never a scene.
Right.
Kevin's in a scene where he's got this big poker game that happens. It's like a cloak and dagger backroom poker game, lots of money changing hands. Well, that game gets robbed in the movie. But before it gets robbed, I had this idea. I was like, well, I really want to do a scene with Kevin Nash, and there's nothing written here. I had already done like probably 3 scenes in the movie, and the producers and the director, Jake, they liked what I was doing. So it was almost like, not to pat myself on the back, but you hear this phrase in sports a lot, but like I was kind of like a hot hand, go with the hot hand. Like everything I was doing was working out. So I figured, hey, maybe they wouldn't mind if I just pitched this. I got the idea. I said, what if at the beginning of the poker scene, to show the connection between my character and Nash's character, because we talk about how they're partners, we never actually show them in the same room together.
Right.
Why don't we have me do a scene where I walk up to him with all this money, I hand him a briefcase full of money, and I say, you take this down, you win this pot, you and me, we're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels. You got this, big dog. And I like give him the money and I walk the fuck out like I own the place, kind of a thing.
Right.
So I pitched that to David, to Richard, to Jake. I was, pitched it to everybody I could that would listen. And it worked out, man. They said, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. We've got a little bit of time that day. It would be very easy to kind of shoehorn that scene in literally right at the top of the moment. Shoehorn that moment in at the top of the scene. Fuck it. Let's do it. And all I had to do was build a platform of the Grip and Electric team had to build a platform of Apple boxes. If you don't know what an Apple box is, it's basically just like the all-purpose wooden crate that we use on movie sets for everything from, standing on to anchoring down a Dana Dolly or whatever it may be. So they had to literally build a platform of 2 Apple boxes, not 1, but 2, so that I can, maybe it was 1 Apple box. I'm exaggerating, but basically there were like 5 Apple boxes in a line so that as I walk up to Kevin, and trust me, I'm still looking up at him, even on the apple boxes. But without the apple boxes, I literally would have walked up to him and came up to his maybe the mid part of his chest.
Right.
And when you're framing up two actors in a standard close up or a two shot, you can't have one 7-footer and one 5'10" guy. It doesn't
Right.
really work out. So sure enough, I get on the platform box, a little challenging, because I want to have this like power strut, boom, just power strutting in the room. I got to power strut my ass over, a handful of apple boxes, not trip, stick the landing, hit my lines, and fuck off across the apple boxes as well. The bridge of apple boxes that the G&E team built for me. So it was great. I still think about that scene every now and then. Like when I watch this movie, like that's my favorite scene, probably my favorite scene in the movie, because again, the 10-year-old kid in me got to perform opposite in my mind, the heavyweight champion of the world. So it was a lot of fun to work with Kevin. Um, Kevin's a terrific guy. Always has had time for me. Always has, been, as they say, like a text away or a Twitter message away. Big shout out to Kevin because he's had a really tough year. He lost his son today. I'm sorry, he lost his son
This
this year.
past year.
This
Yeah.
past year, and what a challenge that must be. My heart goes out to him. He's such a wonderful person, and just I wish him nothing but peace as he goes through that really challenging time.
I was listening to his podcast yesterday, Tommy, and yeah, that's the Click This podcast. He was a great person to work with. We had one big dinner where it was like Kevin Nash was kind of the head of the table, and we went to was it Chicago Sam's, which is the King of Cromwell's favorite eatery for the most part.
Yes,
And I think
sir.
there was like 9 or 10 of us with Kevin Nash, and he's just kind of holding court and telling wrestling stories and telling life stories. And I really enjoyed him in the film Dog, which I think I said on this show a few weeks ago. But let's keep progressing with our story here about Blue Line / The Assault.
Yeah, well, we really enjoyed our time with Kevin. So there were a number of other really great actors in this movie. Nikki Moore plays the other heist, the other woman behind the heist. She was really cool to work with. Super athletic. She's actually like a incredible dancer. If you follow her on Instagram, I don't know her exact handle, but punch in Nikki Moore and you'll find her. She's verified. Terrific dancer, very talented, and I think a lot of her athletic ability kind of came out because she does quite a bit of action and she was able to pick up the choreography really well. Thyme Lewis was in this movie. Thyme Lewis was in Days of Our Life. He played a character named Jonah Carver. And it's funny because, you'd be out with Thyme somewhere and some woman would just be like, "Oh my God, it's Dr. Carver." And I'd be like, "What? What do you?" And like, sure enough, like soap opera fans to this day were recognizing Thyme. And I was like, wow, this is crazy, man. Daytime television's got that, deep connection with its fans.
Sure.
But the cool thing about Thyme is he was a stunt driver as well, and we actually had some really cool chase scenes in this movie. The action's terrific, and that's a credit to Jake Cooney for being able to put those kind of sequences in. This was not a massive budget, so you got to get extra creative. And having a guy like Thyme Lewis, who's a pretty damn good wheel man, well, that always helps you out. And another fun thing about Thyme Lewis, and I won't go too deep into this, but a little inside baseball here. My friends and I all call each other brother, and we
Yeah.
say it. We use brother almost like it can be a verb, it can be an adjective. We could be like, if you're disappointed, it's like brother. If you're happy, it's like brother. If you're just like brother, can you hand me that pen? Like brother is just like prevalent in my friend base. We call women brother. Brother is just brother.
Yeah.
If you get something bad, if you have bad news to tell someone, you start it with brother. I got to tell you something. There's a lot of ways that we use the word brother, and it all came from Thyme because Thyme used to call everyone brother, and
Okay.
maybe it's a West Coast thing, maybe it's an LA thing, but brother, this, and oh brother, hey brother. So by the end of the show, last couple of weeks, we were all calling each other brother to kind of bust Dime's balls. It was almost like we were kind of like making fun of him a little bit,
Right.
but it ended up sticking like nothing has ever stuck in my life. And to this day, like Richard texted me this morning, and
Brother.
literally the text, I wish I could show you, it starts off with brother. So like this is something that really has stood the test of time. So I want to thank Thyme Lewis for not only being fun to hang out with on this movie, but thank you for giving us the phrase brother. We love to
Brother.
say it as let me check in here. Look who's back. Stephen
Hey, Stephen
E. What's
Edwards.
up,
Very good.
Stephen? Love Kevin Nash's work in WWF, WWE, and WCW. Original founding father of the New World Order and everybody knows that shit's for life. Another
right.
great actor I worked with, Lester Keefe, cool guy, great actor. I worked with him as well on my movie Arlo the Burping Pig because he's an LA guy. We'll talk about that movie sometime. You know, you just become so close with people on a movie like this. We talked a little bit about the production. Now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff as we round this show out. I call this movie The Tale of Two Hotels. That's kind of
Right.
how we could phrase this because at this the main Dragon Cromwell at the time had two hotels. There was the Quality Inn, which was kind of like the B team hotel, and then there was I believe it was called it was the Crown Plaza at the time. It was the Cromwell Crown Plaza. They owned it. We called it the Crown. So if you were on the A squad, you were staying at the Crown, and literally across the street, like you could physically just easily cross this few lane street, and you'd be at the Quality Inn. Now I actually was staying at the B team hotel, the Quality Inn, and I didn't mind it because at the time it's kind of funny. You could actually there were still smoking rooms, believe it or not, at the Quality Inn. There was like one floor where you could smoke in the rooms. So I was like, nah, fuck it. I'm happy to be here. Like I can smoke, no one's gonna bug me. And as you can imagine, the Quality Inn kind of became like the party hotel.
Right.
Because, you know, let's put it this way. The security was kind of low. There was like one guy at the desk downstairs. It was kind of a free for all. The entire crew was staying there, so it was like I guess you could say that was like the animal house to stay at. And then across
Yes.
the street was the Crown, which was a much classier hotel. There wasn't a whole lot of funny business going on there, and that's where a lot of the stars, the producers would stay, things like that. And it was great because they had this awesome bar at the Crown, and every night it was this like horseshoe bar, and every night we would kind of belly up to that bar and eat as a family, like the main players, Richard, David would stop in, and whatever actor was working that night, Jake would be there. And they always say like business is done in the bars and the cars, and it doesn't mean that like you have to be a full blown drunk.
Right.
But there is something nice about being able to sit down, and you don't have to drink alcohol. You can have a goddamn Coca-Cola for all I care, but just being a part of that fellowship where everybody's just kind of hanging around after set and having a meal together and talking about what happened that day, talking about what's going to happen the next day. And what was extra fun and why we all became extra close on this movie was, hey, we shot this movie in January. It's New England. It's unpredictable. And we got dumped on with just a ton of snow. This is the one and only movie that I've ever worked on where we actually had snow days. I've never worked on a film where they had to cancel because of snow before. And there was not one, not two, but I think 3 full days where we were just inoperable. Uh,
Right.
so what was originally supposed to be a 15-day shoot almost got like a whole additional week tacked onto it. And it's funny because this whole stretch altogether was probably a month. But because of those 3 snow days and that 1 week of kinda blizzardy conditions, the movie feels like, Mike, doesn't this experience feel like it was almost over like a period of a season?
It did feel like a season. It felt like a fortnight, as they used to say. I mean, I remember that you're speaking about that bar. Well, the day that I shot the scene that I was in as a henchman, I think I was one of your henchmen actually. Uh,
You were.
at night, it's like, hey, the Super Bowl's happening. What are we going to do? Well, everyone gathered around the bar to watch the Super Bowl, and it was the one where Brady and the Patriots held the defense down against the Seattle Seahawks, I believe. I think it was the Seahawks were coming in for their second straight Super Bowl, trying to win 2 in a row, and the Patriots hadn't won a Super Bowl in 10 years. So it was kind of a return to form, which started the second Patriots run, the second half of the run, and then there was another situation, Tommy. I think I mentioned it last week that I went home for a couple of days and saw Tyson Fury win the world heavyweight boxing title for the first time, and now whatever it is, 7 or 8 years later, he's considered one of the greatest boxers of all time, and so it just goes to show that so much can happen. I actually have a pretty good memory of all this stuff. I mean, I remember the different situations, the different behind the scenes shenanigans. I think there was even a crew member that I didn't get along with too well that flared up a little bit. But I mean, for the most part, it was a great time. And people like Kevin Nash, Tommy Dreamer, I believe, showed up one night, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Tommy Dreamer was involved in this movie. He did a cameo. I think he played one of my henchmen actually alongside David. David had a cameo in this one. And yeah, that Super Bowl was something else, man. I vividly remember that Super Bowl because I got to sit next to Tom Sizemore, a big football fan, and watch the game. And if you remember, this isn't a sports show, but the Patriots were about to lose. The Seahawks were about to punch it in, as they say, for the go-ahead score, end of the game. And instead, the Seahawks opted to throw the ball, and it was intercepted and run back for a pick six, and the Patriots won, and the rest is history. Yeah, that was an amazing game. And really, it's funny, we look back on these times, but like that was one of the best nights of my life, man. I know that sounds crazy, but like I remember working that day on the movie. I had a great scene. I was my death scene, I think. Spoiler alert. I don't make it out of this one in one piece.
No secret.
Yeah, a little secret blown there if you ever check out The Assault. But I remember that was the day we shot my death scene. And I remember just being so excited to know that we were going to wrap like right around, I don't know, 5 or 6 o'clock. I think we wrapped at like 6. It was an early day. I think we wrapped at 6. I think kickoff was like whatever, 6:15 or whatever. It was like it was a bang bang play, as they say. Like I remember wrapping, getting my shit, and getting my ass to the Crown Plaza. And like this is another thing I remember being pretty cool because I was buddies with Sizemore. Me and Tom had like the best seat in the bar. We were literally like directly in front of the TV because Sizemore was like, I'm sitting here. Tommy, you sit right here. And I was like, all right, I'm in with Sizemore. I get the good seat while we watch the Super Bowl. So it was a blast, man. I'll never forget that.
I think Chris Farley's brothers showed up somehow too.
Different movie, Mike. Different movie. Okay. You're thinking of the camping movie, but that was also a Jacob Cooney movie, and that was also in Cromwell. Guys, you got to understand, like during this time period, there was probably like a 1-year stretch where Mike and I worked on about like 4 different projects in Cromwell. So it does get a little foggy sometimes. Yeah, but a couple quick things as we round it out. This was also my first time working on a movie that had a big explosion.
Right.
I remember, visual effects have come a long way since this movie. And it's kind of funny because like nowadays this might have been a visual effect, but there's still nothing like really blowing something up practically. The level of flames, the ball of fire that you get, the debris that goes everywhere. Yes, you can recreate some of that with computers, but there's nothing like the real thing. It's so unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen when you blow shit up. You can just, hope that you get the right charge and hope that nothing goes wrong. So we had a scene where basically these cars are chasing each other and an IED, some kind of explosive device is thrown out of the car, rolls under another vehicle, and boom, kablooey. So that was kind of a bit of a destination, if you will, meaning like, I don't even think I was working that day, but David was like, do you want to come watch the car get blown up? I'm like, fuck yeah, I do. Absolutely. Right. So, I came down and checked it out. And it's fun. It's always fun when you have a movie that you're working on. And again, it's just like something to do. You're there anyway. Like who wouldn't want to go and check that out and watch the explosion happen? I'm there with my buddies. I enjoyed just kind of like hanging around the set. Again, you know, we've talked about this many times, but you make such good friends on not every movie, but some movies you make these long, life-lasting relationships with people, and this was definitely one of those. Just in those three guys, and granted, like obviously we've talked about John Del Ponte before.
Oh yeah,
Robbie Savage worked on this movie. Um, a guy by the name of Christopher By, who I still work with quite a bit, worked on this movie, and that was the first time I met him. Ryan Sweeney, who's also a cinematographer,
yeah,
he was just taking photos at the time. He was just like a still photographer. So this was like the very beginning of his career. He had a really nice Mercedes. I'm sorry, he's gonna be mad for me saying that. He had a really nice BMW at the time. I think it was a 7 Series. It was either yeah, I think it was a 7 Series. It was either 5 Series or a 7 Series. It was a badass vehicle. And I remember being almost a little nervous because he was like, "Oh, this is your car," because my character is supposed to be rich. He's like, "This is your car." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna drive it." And I remember driving it and it just being such a beautiful vehicle, not wanting to get on it too hard. And it's funny because I had a similar story last week from the set of Blunt, where the director was basically like, "Hey, get on that thing a little bit faster next side. Can you give it some more gas?" And I was hesitant to really peel out in this guy's car that I just friggin' met. And he
right.
comes up after the take. He's like, "Now you can get on that more, brother. You can get on it more. Hit that thing when you pull out." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Aye, aye, Captain." And
Yeah.
I, fired it up, spun the tires out a little bit, and had a little fun. Jared Hartley says, "Everybody loves a good explosion. Who doesn't, man? Who doesn't like a big bang if it's controlled? It's nothing like well a good
Right.
controlled explosion.
Shrapnel. Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
shrapnel is not a good thing, but again, that's why you have the right people on set that know how to do these things safely.
well,
Um,
Tommy, you talked about the right people and teamwork and all that good stuff, and it kind of just to do the football metaphor one last time. You know, you look at a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars that had an upward trend, from the second half of the season, as opposed to Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, and you can see that for the whole season or even 2 or 3 seasons, as great as Rodgers is, he's had some controversies and he's a little outspoken for a football quarterback. And you see what happens. The Detroit Lions, who he's made fun of, when he's beaten them. Well, they got a little bit of revenge the other night, and they kept Rodgers and the Packers out of the playoffs. Like I said, compare that to the Jacksonville Jaguars, where the team kind of rallied together and had a great second half of the season, and they're in the
yeah, folks
playoffs.
don't know watching this if you don't know anything about football. The Packers are a team that are perennial playoff, uh, movers and shakers, and the Lions are a team that have literally never won a championship. So I think what Mike is saying that tenacity, grit, team play, all those elements put together, and your little movie can end up coming up with an upset victory on set. And I think that's kind of what ended up happening on this movie. As we kind of close it out with some final thoughts. Uh, like I said, this is the first movie that I worked with Richard Switzer, one of David Gear's early films, and those are two guys that not only are some of my closest friends in the world, guys that I talk to on a quite a frequent basis. But you look at them career wise and take the friendship out of it. Richards produced probably 10 movies last year. David produced several movies last year. I just worked on a Richard Switzer movie. I'm literally going to work on a David Gear movie this week. I got cast in a film, which we'll get into that more next week. But it's definitely one of those things where it's just so cool to see that, hey, in any career path, forget about the movies, but in any career path, if you can keep your friends for like 7, 8 years and y'all are just as close, if not closer, with all that time, that's a special thing and it's an important thing. And it served us all well because, we've all helped each other a lot along the way, in everything from just being a sounding board to, to being a friend, because this movie world can throw you a lot of curveballs and leave you with a lot of kind of negative feelings at times, and you don't know who to turn to. and process it and have the sounding board. And Mike and I have this relationship too, but it's also nice, I've got that relationship with Richard, got that relationship with David where, if something might not be quite going my way, I can give those guys a call, and we can talk, and usually things will feel better after you get that out in the air, and
I want to
again,
start singing the Golden Girls theme song, Tommy, for crying out loud. Jeez.
Well, buddy, it's a rare thing. How many friends do you have from 7 years ago that you text every day?
Not many. I mean, it's you're right, and especially with relocating. I kind of found out the hard way. Like when I relocated, you and David and maybe a dozen others are people that I really kept in touch with, but maybe 40 to 50% of the people that I was talking to weekly up in New England, I no longer speak to that much. And maybe that's for the better, maybe it's for the worse, but the time has passed. But it's interesting, Tommy, we talk about these things. I can really put myself back into that 2 or 3 week period with the cold and the snow and the Chicago Sams. And I believe just so many weird little situations. I believe David and associates were trying to get who they called the Shirley Temple of China to be in their next movie. So like the Shirley Temple of China, as she was addressed to,
right.
Yeah, she was like the big child star of China. So they were literally calling her
a child star that was on
China.
set. I think, you know what, Mike?
Up at the set.
I think she actually ended up having a cameo in the film. She might have a cameo in the movie. That's a good question. I got to dust that one off. Guys, if you're looking to watch this movie, I highly recommend watching it for a couple of reasons. Obviously, because I'm in it.
Sure.
Number one. No, but really, like, I am very proud of my performance in this movie. I play a bad guy. I'm very dislikable. You won't have to reach too far to dislike me. And it was a blast. I loved doing it. It was a lot of fun. So check this one out for that. And also just check this movie out because this is a great example of, remember, this is back in the early days of Richard and David's career and even Jacob Cooney's career, the director. These guys put together a really terrific movie for working on a small budget with a lot of inexperienced crew people and plugging in the right kind of mix of Hollywood actor, pro wrestler, and some really other talented, for lack of a better phrase, no names like myself, just putting in good performances and telling the story. So I hope you all check this one out as Ariana checks in. What's up, Ariana? Hey, listen, you're never too late for a little and action fun. And Steven says The Assault is on his list. Yeah, excited to hear your thoughts on that. Cool performance by Kevin Nash. Always great to see the big man do his thing. So also, and anytime you make a movie at this level, people love to take shots at films, and
Sure.
I don't blame them. Hey, it's a pastime to talk shit about movies that you don't like. But when you get on a movie set and you see all the hard work that goes into making any movie and all the people that got to come together, you get a different perspective of what's good and what's bad. And you realize that, like, sometimes just finishing in getting it, like I say, to the finish line with a bow wrapped around it, that's an accomplishment that everyone who worked on this film should be proud of. And, I might dust this one off and watch it again sometime soon. Guys, before we close it out, I just wanted to say thanks for watching. I love doing this show and talking about this stuff with Mike and thinking back on these great times we had a while ago and filling in the blanks of my memory. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go in the search bar, type in Tom DiNucci, and it'll come up. Really making a hard press for 1,000 subscribers. I'm just over 800. With a little bit of your help, we can get there. So if you don't mind, if you like the show, throw us a like. If you're not subscribing, hit subscribe. And if you don't mind, share this out. Tell your friends that are interested in movies that we've got this show coming every single week. We're going to really be consistent about that in 2023. Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, you will be looking at myself and Mikey over here. And we're going to be talking about he's going to make that exact face. And we're going to be talking about just our wild experiences and all these little tales of making movies over the last 15 years or so.
Hey, Tommy, do we have a topic for next week, or is that to be determined?
No, we do have a topic for next week. I'm glad you asked that. So guys, another plug. This Friday, January 13th, a film that I co-wrote and directed called My Father Muhammad Ali will be coming out everywhere, streaming. You can pre-order it now on iTunes, actually. So punch in My Father Muhammad Ali pre-order. It's available on Vudu, really like a lot of the streaming platforms. This is the untold story of Muhammad Ali Jr. It's a story of his struggles with everything from family to addiction to um, really just finding peace with becoming the son of being the son of one of the most famous, legendary people of all time, Muhammad Ali, the greatest. It's a truly fascinating story. Myself and co-director Chad Verdi have been working really hard on this for many years now, putting it together. And finally, this Friday, it'll be coming out everywhere. It's available in select cities in theaters, but your best bet is just to pre-order that thing on iTunes and check it out. It's coming out Friday. So next week on the show, we're going to just do a whole show dedicated to My Father Muhammad Ali. We're going to talk about how the movie came about. We're going to talk a little bit about what it was like working with Muhammad Ali Jr., how we crafted the story, and we're going to talk for the movie buffs out there. We're going to talk a little bit about the production approaches and methods that we used to make this raw movie kind of match the raw lifestyle that Muhammad Ali Jr. has lived.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I've seen a rough cut of that one, and it's very good. And
Thank you,
yeah,
brother.
man, it's been a fun time. I mean, I hope people enjoyed our walk down memory lane, and it's just crazy, Tommy, how 7 or 8 years. Just to clarify, this was the winter from 2014 into 2015. So this was like February of 2015. This all happened, and so that's what I guess that's 8 years now because we're almost in February of 2023. Um, but yeah, man, we had a great time. So many things are the same, but so many things have changed. Uh, my channel, of course, is subscribed to Mike Messier YouTube channel, MikeMessier.com. And this has been a fun episode, buddy. It's been fun to take this walk back into the Cromwell snowstorm, so to speak.
It really has, man. My memory cup is full, and I'm feeling very satisfied. And I might go call my buddies Richard and David later on and tell them that I had some nice times thinking about them. We
Mm.
hope we hope to see you next week. It's always a blast. We had a lot of live watchers today, and hey, don't be afraid to interact, man. We're here to chat. So anytime you want to come on and drop a comment as we're doing the show, we're happy to engage. And if you can't think of anything and you happen to watch the show later, drop a comment down and we'll get to it next week too. We're here for your questions. We're here for your thoughts as well. Thanks again. Tell your friends about it. Let me just sign off to Stephen E. Thanks for watching. Kim, really appreciate that. And Jared, I appreciate you for checking this out. I had a lot of fun too. We hope to see you all next week on episode 32 and action. My Father, Muhammad Ali. Andres, see you later, brother. See you, everybody. Thanks again. Happy Tuesday.